they're here. They're here, and I don't know what to do. Hello and welcome to Squatchbot.com. I'm Darren Smith, and for those of you who have subscribed to my channel, you may have seen the community post that I put up last week mentioning my belief that I had encountered Sasquatch while investigating an area, and we have returned to that location, and I've come here to continue my investigation of the area and to get some more video footage and to do some recreations so you guys can have a better understanding of what happened that day. Having reviewed the video footage and the audio recordings from that afternoon, I absolutely believe that I encountered Sasquatch while in this area. On our last episode, I discovered some rather interesting impressions in a new area of interest I've been investigating. These impressions were a little over 11 inches long, and they were clearly not bear tracks. However, I dismissed the impressions as being inconclusive. After posting that video, I received quite a bit of feedback from you guys suggesting that the impressions may have indeed come from a Sasquatch. Agreeing that the shape and consistencies of those impressions was intriguing, I decided to head back up into that area a couple of days later to continue our investigation. On March 3rd, 2020, I headed back into the area where I found the impressions. However, instead of stopping and parking my vehicle at the previous location, I decided to continue up the road a ways. I wanted to see where the snow line was, because based on my research, I believe the Sasquatch tend to skirt the snow line whenever possible during the winter months. I continued up the road for approximately another 2.5 miles from the previously investigated area, and I discovered the snow line. I also discovered quite a bit of snow on the road, which was creating a challenge for my low-clearance vehicle, and I was eventually forced to turn around and start heading back down the mountain. However, I did take note of a snow-covered area that looked really promising, and I decided to stop there for a while to search for tracks in the snow. Little did I know, my day was going to take a very terrifying turn. As I pulled up to the area and parked my vehicle, I heard a very loud Sasquatch vocalization coming from the hillside above me. Extremely frustrated with myself for not having an audio recorder recording, I quickly grabbed my YouTube video camera and began recording, and then I frantically raced to grab additional recording equipment. Besides my YouTube video camera I had recording, I quickly grabbed my parabolic microphone and a Zoom omnidirectional microphone, and I began recording the sounds I was hearing on the embankment above. Moments later, as an airplane flew overhead and began drowning out all of the sounds in the area, I turned to pause the audio recorder, and to my absolute horror, I discovered the fully charged audio recorder I was using was malfunctioning, and it was completely powered down. At this point, I became very agitated. Not only was I convinced the Sasquatch were in the area, I was also very concerned they were somehow rendering my recording equipment inoperable. Okay, I don't know what's going on here, but literally, I had the parabolic going, you saw me there. I was trying to record sounds Unfortunately, there's a plane going around, but I heard some knocking and I heard some whooping, and I turned to turn off the recorder because another plane was approaching, and I looked and the recorder was off. And I've mentioned this before, I have experienced unusual technology failure when I believe Sasquatch are around. I was on 3 expeditions and I witnessed across the board technology failure. And it happens with our recording devices, our cameras, our audio recorders, and it's absolutely unexplainable. What's going on with this audio recorder, I don't know. But literally, you saw me standing there, I was recording the sounds, and I turned to turn off the recorder because the plane was approaching and the recorder's not on. It was powered off, and I can show you that when I power it up, it has plenty of battery life. I don't know if you could see that. It's got plenty of battery life, but if I try to record, the thing dies. So I'm gonna grab other audio recorders out of the car because there's something unusual happening. I quickly grabbed my Zoom 3D sound microphone and I quickly connected it to the parabolic. And I was able to capture some very compelling audio recordings before the Sasquatch began moving out of the area. As the bipedal movement I was hearing indicated to me that the Sasquatch was moving out of the area, I became very distraught. Desperate to obtain more evidence, I was anxious to give chase. However, unarmed and alone, I was also very concerned for my personal safety. Honestly, I don't know what to do. Another plane's here, so I'm not recording. But I can hear them. I can hear them walking, and I can hear them making these whooping sounds. They're here. They're here, and I don't know what to do. I don't think I should go up there. So in this absolute peak adrenaline state, I thought it important to gather as much evidence as I possibly could, and I quickly grabbed all the audio recorders and cameras and got them recording. And I also pulled out the parabolic microphone and I was listening in to the area I believed the sentry was located, and I could clearly hear primate-like grunting sounds, and I also heard bipedal movement. And in my absolute emotional state, I wasn't sure what the best approach was going to be. I wasn't sure if I should hunker down here and try to collect audio evidence by making vocalizations, encouraging them to communicate back, or if I should grab my camera equipment and power up the embankment with the hopes of gathering some sort of photographic evidence. Now, I know it is absolutely impossible to sneak up on a Sasquatch, and they could absolutely elude us if that is their intent. However, I really think the photographic evidence is what we need to prove the existence of Sasquatch, and I thought at the time that it took precedence over the audio recordings. So after I had obtained what I thought was enough audio evidence, I quickly grabbed my camera equipment and I powered up the embankment with hopes of capturing something on camera. Okay, I'm heading into the woods where I heard the sounds. I could hear them. I could hear them on the parabolic. I could hear them walking. It was definitely bipedal walking. I could hear they were making like little whooping sounds and grunting sounds. And I absolutely believe the Sasquatch are here. And I'm absolutely terrified. But we gotta get up here. As I moved through the woods, I would stop periodically and use the parabolic microphone to pinpoint the location of the bipedal movement that I was hearing, and then I would continue moving in its direction. However, I was a bit surprised that the figure I was following didn't seem to be in too much of a hurry to elude me. In fact, it would walk for a few steps and then stop and pause for a moment, almost as if it wanted me to follow it. I'm hearing sounds down here. The creature I was following led me to an area with very heavy brush, which I couldn't see so far into, and nearby, a very agitated bird was screeching incessantly, raising the alarm that I may be moving into a very dangerous situation. I was far from my vehicle, and the only protection I had with me was a can of bear spray. I stood at the edge of the brush and listened for a bit using my parabolic microphone, and I really couldn't make out any other sounds other than the wind and the distraught bird. But clearly something was not right, and I started getting a sickening feeling that I was in absolute mortal danger. Despite the unsettling feelings that were welling up inside me, I was determined to obtain photographic evidence, and I began moving into the heavy brush towards the sounds of the distraught bird. However, as I did, I discovered the brush that was covered with snow was incredibly difficult to traverse, and getting into the area was posing quite a challenge. As I continued to power forward, a very unsettling thought had occurred to me. At this point, I believed I was following a sentry that was trying to lead me away from the other Sasquatch in the area by moving very slowly through the woods. As I mentioned before, if the Sasquatch had wanted to elude me, it could have very easily had fled into the woods. However, it didn't. Now a very different thought came to mind. This Sasquatch could be luring me into this very heavily brushed area so that it could ambush me. Thousands of people go missing in the national forests, never to be seen or heard from again, and some people believe the Sasquatch may be abducting them. Upon this realization, I was overwhelmed with a sense of terror, and my flight response overruled my passions for obtaining photographic evidence, and I quickly retreated to a safe distance.
Okay, something is absolutely not right. There's a lot of things going through my mind. I'm using the parabolic mic, and I'm following the bipedal movement that I'm hearing, and it led me to this location down there that is very thick with brush. I can't see very far into it, and there was a bird that was in absolute extreme agitation, and what I was first thinking was that the sentry was moving me away from the other Sasquatch that are in the area. But being down here and experiencing this, there's definitely something's not right. And I don't think it's safe for me to go into that area because I'm not so sure the Sasquatch is trying to lure me away. I think that if a Sasquatch wanted to elude me, it could do so very easily. But this thing was making noise, almost as if it wanted me to follow it. It would move a short distance and it would stop, and it would move and then it would stop. And I really do believe it's now hiding in this thick brush down here, and I think that's why that bird is really agitated, and I don't think it's safe to go in there because there is a lot of evidence out there that supports that the Sasquatch may be abducting people. And if that's the case, then what's going on here could be something a lot more sinister. I'm really concerned that it is hiding in that brush with the hopes that I will move in and investigate. And I think it would have an absolute opportune moment to ambush me. So I'm just pulled back a little ways, and I am gonna stay here, and I'm gonna hunker down, and I'm just going to monitor that area, and hopefully I will see it. But I definitely do not feel safe going into that brush, and I am creating a little distance between me and that area at the moment.
I found a comfortable log where I could sit and monitor the heavy brush area, but still be at a relatively safe distance from it. I remained here for a couple of hours observing. Earlier, after I moved out of the heavy brush, the bird that was making all of the commotion continued for probably another half an hour and then went quiet. At that point, I figured the Sasquatch had moved out of the area. However, I didn't abandon my location, and I continued my observation of the area, occasionally making vocalizations or wood knocks with the hopes of enticing curiosity. However, the area was quiet. With the sun descending and the temperatures dropping rapidly, I figured it was time to get moving back towards my vehicle. However, before clambering down the hillside, I wanted to investigate the area where the vocalizations had come from, and where I thought the sentry was positioned. And while investigating the area, I discovered some very compelling ground disturbances that led me to conclude that the Sasquatch was situated next to this pine tree. From here, it had an excellent view of the road, which stretched in both directions, and it also had an excellent view of the area I parked my vehicle. I also found impressions near the log, which indicated a possible escape route that the Sasquatch had taken. The location was ideal for a sentry that wanted to monitor the area near the road, and although I wanted to spend more time investigating this area, as the daylight hours were fading rapidly, I was anxious to get over to the opposite side of the road and head down into the ravine where I believed the river was located, and where I thought perhaps the other Sasquatches may have been located. I trekked down the hillside, stopping at my vehicle to add a couple of more layers of clothing, and then I ventured into the forest on the opposite side of the road, continuing my trek down towards the river. However, I soon discovered the trek was going to be slow going, as the forest was incredibly thick with vegetation, and the steep embankment down to the river was covered with incredibly slippery snow. With nightfall rapidly approaching, my concerns over departing increased. The road leading out of the area is often obstructed by fallen trees or rock slides, and it was very important I give myself plenty of time to get off the mountain before dark. And I reluctantly had to abandon my search. However, I did discover the area where I thought the river was located was actually a tributary creek that was virtually iced over. However, there were pools of water where animals could drink, though I didn't see any evidence of animal activity. Despite the fact that I was unable to locate any other evidence of other Sasquatch in the area, I am convinced that our experience today was absolutely Sasquatch related. I wholeheartedly believe the vocalization I heard when I parked my vehicle was Sasquatch, and the subsequent bipedal movement, wood knocks, and primate whoops and grunting sounds I heard were also irrefutably Sasquatch. The day was filled with a lot of emotion and adrenaline, and although on one side I'm a bit disappointed with myself for abandoning the chase at the heavy brush, I absolutely believe that caution was needed in that situation. Moving into an area of heavy brush, alone and unarmed, where an unidentified animal of unknown intent was hiding, was clearly not a good call. And the warning shrills of that distraught bird were absolute indications that I was moving into a very dangerous situation, and the only reasonable course of action was to give the animal space and to pull back a ways. Live to fight another day. And although the chase was aborted, our journey is far from over. I have reviewed this new area using Google Earth, and I have discovered some very intriguing habitat nuances I believe are very enticing to Sasquatch, and I am very anxious to get back up into this area to continue our investigation, and I'm absolutely excited to be bringing you guys along with me. So the chase is still on, and until next time, I'm Darren Smith, and I'll see you here at squatchbot.com.